Okay, great.
There we go.
Because we have two cameras, people moving at the same time. So
That's
we
what
wanted to
happens when
get
you're great.
Facebook Live, YouTube
YouTube.
video. So yes, this is a CNA production.
Yes, it is.
I'm Natalie Arsenault.
I'm Shantera Chapman, and we are the dynamic duo of Defiance.
Yes, we are.
And we are once again coming to you from the WorkHuman Conference in Austin, Texas.
Yes,
And so, as promised, it is time for the day one debrief.
it is.
And by the end of this, we will let you know where we stand.
And wait until the end to let them know.
Well, they'll probably get the picture. They'll get the point
Okay.
here sooner or later. So, how about we start with good?
Yeah, I was gonna say we should leave with good. That's what I was
We're going to
thinking.
lead with good. Okay, so we, divided and conquered.
Yes.
Because there's so many things going on at a conference
Lots
like
of
this.
tracks of work.
Yeah, and we want to make sure we get it all in, right?
Yes.
We want to see all and hear all.
Yes, as much as possible.
As much as possible. So, I went to 2 sessions this afternoon that I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
The first one was called Leveraging the Power of Human Differences.
Okay.
And it sounds interesting, right? So it's a very
Yes.
intriguing title.
Yes.
And Donna Kimmel from Citrix, she talked literally about Citrix and how they built their inclusion and diversity program.
So it was like a case study.
It was definitely a case
Okay,
study.
we like case
Yeah,
studies.
she didn't try to come up with anything crazy and profound.
Right.
She didn't have to make any statements. This is what we do at Citrix.
Yes.
And I was actually really impressed. One, that her presentation was so succinct and
Right.
just kind of to the point. But she had data points.
Okay.
And we love data points because
We love data points.
that proves your point, right?
does.
It proves your point. So she started by talking about, putting together this full survey.
Yes.
We can attest to that. That's what we do. When you want to know what the people are saying,
Go to the people.
you want to hear from the people? Go to the people.
It's really simple.
And so
Go to the people.
just go to them and ask them questions, right?
Yes.
And so they came back with a lot of good information about how people feel in the company.
Okay.
And so based on that, they started to make changes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she was, she had these thoughts about diversity equals the difference,
Yes.
and focusing on the differences. And inclusion in their mind means togetherness.
Okay.
So they really had to understand the differences
Mm-hmm.
in order to start to build a framework around togetherness.
I get that.
Yeah, and she said the one big thing that they did was talk about days off. And how do they take, what are the days we give our teams as days off?
Okay.
And she says they realized right off the bat that they didn't give Martin Luther King Day off.
Okay.
And they did not give Veterans Day off.
Huh. Okay.
And the way they're tracking right now, they have a lot of non-white leaders and a lot
Okay.
of female leaders.
Okay.
And they knew that Martin Luther King Day should have been something they should have thought about. And they said,
Yeah.
well, we don't know. There was no ill intention. Who knows?
Right.
Because that decision was
Yeah.
made years ago.
Yeah,
But
it's not a traditional company
it's
holiday.
not. It's not. Neither one of them.
Yes, neither one of them.
So they decided to add those two, I want to say last year, maybe even the year before,
Okay.
to their dates.
Okay.
And she said they immediately started getting emails thanking them
Nice.
from veterans, from
Immediate feedback.
immediate feedback.
Okay.
So they made changes like that. They didn't
Yeah.
go for the big and profound right away.
Okay, fair enough.
Now, this past year, they did something really big, in the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
They decided to go a step further.
Okay.
And they actually have a transgender program. I'd never heard of this before.
Okay.
They actually have a program with benefits for those who
Or like seeking gender reassignment and all that
and they
stuff.
have coaching and counseling for all of those people that work with those people.
Ah,
Which makes a lot of sense to me.
It
because
does.
If you used to work with Deborah and Deborah becomes
Dan. Yeah. Or Dan, yeah.
you need to know how to have that conversation with Dan.
You do.
Because people all of a sudden, I mean, there are questions you have, and it may
Yeah.
cause some friction or
Right.
whatever. Anyway, she did a very good job of talking about Citrix.
Okay.
And how they approach diversity and how things are tracking in their company right now.
Okay.
The last stat that I have, and I took a picture of her slide, it says one of the strengths from her survey was they put the question out there. People here are treated fairly regardless of their.
Okay.
And then they had, sexual orientation, race, gender, age.
Okay.
93% said they are treated fair regardless of sexual orientation.
Okay.
Race, 92%.
Okay.
gender 88%, and age 86%.
That's impressive.
Those are some really good
That's
numbers.
some impressive numbers.
And questions they had about, people were asking questions like, how do you, attest to these great numbers? And then she said, we just talk to people.
That's
novel idea. Just talk to people.
People think it's rocket science. It's really not.
It's not rocket
It's really
science.
not rocket science.
So, the other one was a fill-in, and I thought it was really, funny because the fill-in sometimes is not as good as the person that's hyped up to be, right? And he came in here really, excited and all of that stuff. And his name was John Baldino from Humoreso is the name of his company.
Okay.
Humoreso.
Okay.
But his presentation was all about connections, connectivity, and engagement.
Okay.
And I thought that was really nice because he just, he was like, hey, nothing works without connection.
Right.
Nothing works without engagement.
That's true.
Yeah. And, one of his big takeaways was every message or communication should be about purpose, profit, and people.
Yep.
And he actually had to point out, he was like, and for those of you who don't understand this, without people, you have no purpose.
That's
and
true.
there is no way you can get your profit.
There's no profit.
So he was very, very clear in that.
Okay.
And when it came point to talk about feedback, he was like, here it is. Praise in public, coach in private.
Yes.
If you need to figure out exactly how to do something or when you should talk to someone about something, coaching opportunities and improvements, those should happen in private. And praise, everyone likes to be praised in public.
Yeah.
So don't feel like you have to shame someone.
Right.
In this world of social media, and he did bring it up.
Yeah.
In this world of social media, people make it seem like it's okay to just throw your business out there
Yeah.
and throw you under the bus
That's
in front
true.
of the world.
That's very true.
That is the surefire way to have people shut down on you.
Yes.
So I think, that was a good session as well. I think they both were really, really good.
Okay.
With Mr. Baldino, he just really talked about how to connect.
Okay.
He really, that you could tell that was his space.
Right.
He was funny. He was energetic. He made all kinds of jokes throughout the whole thing.
Okay.
And, brought in, stories about his family, brought in how he used to be as a kid.
Okay.
And all kinds of stuff. And made it really, really interesting. So I think having the lady from Centrix, Donna, who did a very clear-cut case study.
Yeah.
Good job.
Okay.
But, she just did a case study.
Yeah.
And then you had someone who was very engaging.
Okay.
On the topic of engagement.
Yes, that's important.
It's really, really important. And
important.
so I think that made it great.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Okay. So, my two sessions, and I'm going to, because they're long titles, I'm actually going to read directly from the brochure, the little WorkHuman pocket-sized schedule that they gave to us. So, my session, the first one was, about, where is it at? Building a growth culture.
Okay.
Energizing people from the inside out. And it was by Tony Schwartz. He's the CEO and founder of the Energy Project.
Okay.
And
what are we thinking? Did you give him the thumbs down?
I just, here's the thing. So, well, I will say this too. He did have some technical difficulties with his presentation.
Okay.
But this is a good takeaway, right? Because people have become very dependent on PowerPoint to present.
They have.
And if you're speaking on this level, and by level I mean, so yesterday's pre-conference had 900 people. So today's day one presumably had more than 900 people.
Right.
So that's a pretty big stage to be offered.
Right.
To speak to. You should not be dependent on your PowerPoint. He actually paused his entire presentation while they were trying to fix it. And he tried to kind of talk through it, but then it still wasn't fixed. So he kept making comments about how it wasn't fixed. And so it was weird.
And so that kind of shows that he didn't know his content, too.
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
The other thing was the type of content that he had. And, we're proponents of, people receive information differently, and most people tell you there's kind of 4 ways. They may have different language around the 4 ways, but there's kind of 4 ways that people think about things and process things and all that.
Right.
And so you should try in your presentations to do something for each of those folks so that they feel engaged and like you're talking to them. Well, his entire presentation had quadrants. So the entire layout was with, I'm saying so if you're a math person, then this was great. It's right up your alley. Was quadrants. And so every slide he had put the content into a quadrant. And so that was a little, and he even apologized for it. So he, by the time he got around to his kind of third or fourth quadrant of information, he said, I apologize if you guys are quadrant fatigued, but it's really the only way that I know how to bring life to this subject matter. And so I was just like, I can give you about 10 other ways we could have put that information on to a slide so that it could speak and resonate to different people. So the quadrant thing was hard to gather. So in all honesty, I didn't get very much from the session, other than the fact that everybody is a chief energy officer, and that energy is important and it transfers from person to person, and so you can bring good energy or bad energy, but that doesn't really connect me to the title of the presentation, which was growth. Culture of growth.
So you never got to the growth.
We never got to the growth.
You had tons of quadrants.
We had lots of quadrants.
And that's it.
That's about it.
And he didn't know his presentation,
and he didn't know his presentation.
And he couldn't communicate his stuff without
a quadrant. Correct.
So not really a home run.
Not exactly a home run.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's try again. I'm sure they tried again. What was session 2?
We tried again. So the second session, and I feel like I'm the bearer of bad news. Shantera got all the good sessions, basically.
I didn't try.
I don't know how she figured out which ones. She probably networked with some people and talked to the speakers and figured it out. I'm just saying that she got all the good sessions because she wanted to deliver the good news. So, my next session was a panel discussion.
Okay.
Called Beyond a Corporate Initiative, Making Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Real for Employees.
Okay, that's a long
title. Mm-hmm. Moderated by Steve Pemberton, who is the CHRO of Global Force, who is also the folks who are putting this whole shebang on. So the panel was made up of 4 people.
Okay.
They were all diversity officers, right? From Twitter, from Intel, from Next App, from Pfizer. They were all there. They were the 4 that were on the panel. Oddly enough, it was an all-black panel with 1 black male who was from Pfizer.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty interesting because we're talking about diversity and yet there was an all-black panel. But whatever.
Your panel was not diverse.
It wasn't diverse. Let's move past that.
Yeah, because we could have some good insights.
There's some good insights just starting off there. So we'll move past that.
Right.
So the first question that the moderator put out there was, what's the state of inclusion and diversity?
Okay.
And that seemed to me like a pretty good place to start, given that they apparently, from the introductions, they all had a collective amount of wisdom of 100 years.
Right.
So that's a good place to see the trends. What have you been seeing? Where are we at now? What's the state? Except that was not the answers that they wanted to give. They didn't want to really answer that question. So
the state, I just want to be clear.
Yes.
You have 4 diversity officers.
4 diversity officers.
From, large companies, Pfizer, Twitter, all of these places. Yes. And no one answered what is the state
What is the state? Or maybe they thought they were answering it.
But they didn't specifically say, in my opinion, the state of.
Yes.
So you would have to infer.
You would have to infer.
Okay.
So one person talked about the role of a diversity officer.
Okay.
Which I was like, that's not really the question.
That's not the question.
But okay. The other person talked about, and the idea was good. So the person from Twitter kind of set the tone with her opening remark around, to this question at least, around collectivism versus individualism, and that we would see more progress if industries decided as a collective industry to focus specifically on one thing rather than kind of everybody doing their own thing. So her example was supplier diversity.
Okay.
If everybody said in this industry we're going to focus on supplier diversity, we'd see the needle move a lot more than with one individual company doing this and then another one having their own agenda and so forth and so on. And so that's an interesting idea, to bring all of the CEO, the diversity officer.
So these are things I'm going to tackle.
These are the things,
and have
like a collective body a conference for them to align
So
around.
it's a thought. It's a very good thought.
Yeah, like a blue ribbon committee of
Right.
sorts, right? Okay. So that was a good thought, but still did not really answer the question other than to say, I guess if you infer that no progress has been made and they need to take it from a collective perspective. And then we had, commentary around, that they're dealing with things because of the outside world. People bring those things to the inside,
Right.
and it's not like employees check those things at the door. And so looking at those things are important, and it's naive for diversity officers and managers and everybody else to think that their employees are checking these things at the door. Again, a good observation, just not addressing the topic. So we fast forward past that because they went on for about 15, 20 minutes on that question. None of it really addressing the specific question at hand, giving me the state.
So a little disheartening, but you hung in there.
I hung in there.
So she didn't quit, people. She did not walk out.
That's true. I didn't walk out. I didn't.
Go, girl.
I know. I'm proud of myself. Yay me. Okay. They did also, as a part of that question, they'll talk about the hows and how they do things.
Okay.
So Intel said, and again, still not really addressing the state of inclusion and diversity, but whatever. So the how. Intel said they launched this 18-month multicultural study. They learned a lot of things. They've developed these things called warm lines, where if you have a retention itch, which is what she called it, a retention itch, meaning you're interested in leaving the company, you're probably putting feelers out, that you can call this warm line, and it's a safe place for you to talk about all of the reasons why you're not fulfilled at Intel, right? And so they've had about 10,000 cases called.
That's actually not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
Okay.
They've had about 10,000 cases come through that warm line.
Right.
And they've taken like all of the feedback in that warm line, and they've had a 90% retention rate of those 10,000 people. So that's pretty good.
That's very good.
Because they said we're going to specifically address these issues that are coming through these warm lines.
Right.
And interestingly enough, when they boiled down all of the issues, the top two issues were managers and career progression.
That doesn't surprise us, because that's what we typically find when we're out at our client sites.
Exactly.
Those are the major two. And who are in denial?
Managers and the leaders.
Yep, they're in denial. Okay,
Yeah.
Moving on.
And so they found that, as through this study, that employees who felt included are 7 times more likely to stay with a company.
Okay.
So again, not anything necessarily surprising, but it's good that they've done their own internal study and they have research from their own people to support their findings.
Right.
Okay, so the next how came from Pfizer.
And I have a feeling this is going to be good.
This is really an interesting. I'm not really sure how I feel about it.
I know I have questions about it.
I'm sure you do. Okay, so Pfizer's how was all about a coin.
A coin.
COIN, coin. Okay, so there's a coin, and it is called the Straight Talk coin.
Straight Talk.
And every employee apparently has one of these coins.
So you get one when you join.
One, I don't know how many you get, but every employee has a coin available on them, on their person, or okay. And when you are in a meeting or engaged in a conversation or something, and you are ready to have straight talk, you pull out this Straight Talk coin, put it on the table, and the person who you're talking to is now put on notice that you are going into straight talk.
So it's a PSA, but a coin.
It's a PSA.
You know how I always say I'm giving a PSA?
Yes.
So now I don't even have to say I'm about to say something.
You just put the coin on the table.
And so I know that you're not from Pfizer.
I'm not at all. I'm not.
But I have several questions about this. One is, can it just be out all the time? Because most people should be straight shooting.
That's why I was baffled.
I want to be a straight shooter. I should have a coin shirt or something dangle off my necklace.
Right.
Earrings. How can I make this work? Or did you just sit with me?
Because in my interview, I'm gonna be straight, and I don't have a coin yet. If you're in the interview,
you don't have an interview,
and I don't know any other way to be
than to be straight,
except to be straight. So the notion that you have a culture that needs a coin in order to
allow you to
shoot straight, with someone is a little concerning to me.
Because that tells me, outside of you using your coin, having your coin, earning your coin, however you do it, You're supposed to be a part of the script.
Yeah.
You're supposed to speak only when spoken to.
Yes.
And when you do speak, you need to speak in Pfizer terms.
Right. What it really made me think of is the military, right? And so like in the military, you ask for permission to speak freely from your commanding officers. If it's something you disagree with or whatever, you say, Sergeant so-and-so, permission to speak freely, and Sergeant so-and-so will say yes or no, and if you get a yes, you talk. If you don't, you go whatever.
So you're thinking you still say permission to use the coin?
Permission to use the coin, right? And so, you know, in the corporate world, we're not the military, right? You were recruited because you have a special set of skills and a special set of expertise that the organization is expecting for you to deliver on and bring to the table. And they're expecting you to bring all your creativity and your wisdom and your knowledge to the table. And that means I have to communicate, and I have to be able to communicate freely because it is a creative process when you are solutioning or fixing a problem or trying to make something better and improve or whatever the case may be. And so it seems like the coin is in violation of the notion of doing this at its core.
At its core, the coin is shutting down someone's creativity. It is shutting down who they are.
Yeah.
It is saying, hey, we don't want all of that.
Right.
We heard what we hear what other people say. We heard what Steve Jobs had to say about, you know, why did you want great people? Why not let them be great?
Let them be great.
The coin is not going to let you be great.
The coin is not going to let you be great. And think about not just the person carrying it, but if you're in the room and we're having a conversation and then I say, what does that do to you as the person who it's about to go down? It's like, oh my God, it's about to go down.
It's about to be crazy. It's about to be something for real. Because I know if I had the coin and I decide to pull it out, you know, like assuming that it's not always out.
It's not always out.
But if I pull it out and I'm talking to you or whomever, understand that things that come out next may not be, they may not be politically correct.
Yes.
They may not, you know, they may just be, hey.
Your initial feelings or gut reaction.
Yeah, your gut reaction, because that's now telling me that those people are angry, they're upset, or whatever. And, you know, the other thing is, that they probably didn't bring it up in your session, if you bring out this coin and start shooting straight, and shooting straight, and shooting straight, does that not show up in your performance review? Is this supposed to be no repercussions at all?
I would hope not. I mean, because the notion of a safe space, which the coin represents, I'm putting this on the table because I'm about to say some things, and I want a safe space to say it in, and I want to be able to say exactly what I feel right now.
Not get beat up.
Right. That to me is that lays the foundation for you not to get in trouble for what you're about to say or for it to be held against you.
Right. So I'm assuming with the coin came like some documentation because I'm going to need that in writing.
You know, and they didn't really get into that. Right, although the other panel members were taken aback by the coin idea. And you could see it, and then one of them even asked what type of coin was it. Is it like a 25-cent coin or whatever? And he was like, no, it's the straight top coin. And I was like,
We've created a coin.
We've created a coin.
Well,
so that's Pfizer's how.
Any other good ones from any of the others?
Twitter had a thing about me, we, us, and the world. And for them, that means that if you have individual conversations, and this is kind of where I'm a little more in line with, right? If you have individual conversations that are courageous, and you can say and do what you want individually, you and me, one-on-one, right? Then that's the me part. And then you should be able to, once that gets on good ground, extrapolate that to the team.
Yes.
Right? And have those very same difficult conversations with the team, which is the we.
The we.
Right? The team. And then once you conquer the team and y'all are all moving and grooving and sharing and doing all this other stuff, then you can take that to the organization, which is the us.
Yeah.
Right.
And I agree with that because everything has to happen in steps.
Yeah.
And because you can't go out and tell the world how to do something.
No,
if your house
and
is
your house is jacked up.
So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Good enough.
So then, lastly, they got to question number 2, and question number 2 was the moderator said, you know, he would be remiss if he did not raise the issue of Me Too and what that's kind of done for diversity and inclusion and, you know, given that we've done all this training and there's tons of training around sexual harassment and all this, he asked the panel, does this mean we've done something wrong? And my antenna already went up because it was Me Too, and I just have a whole, that's a whole different YouTube video for us and Facebook Live moment for us to talk about the Me Too movement. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, let me just hear what they're gonna say. And the Intel representative said, let's not think about it in terms of something we've done wrong.
Right.
She said, I'd really rather think about this in the terms of what can we learn from it versus what we did that was wrong.
Okay.
So that kind of put me a little aback. I was gathering my items at this point
because now she's going to bail people.
Yeah, I'm rolling out because it's important. I get it, phraseology is important, right? And I think in a matter of methodology and strategic approaches that have been taken to this over the decades, I think it's important to wave the flag and say, this was done wrong. This was the wrong line of thinking. We went down the wrong path. Now that we know that we've gone down the wrong path, what do we need to do to correct what we've done and undo it?
Right.
Not let's just talk about what we can learn from it.
Right, because at that point, Pfizer should have came up and gave everybody a straight shoe coin and said, let's talk for real about this.
Let's talk for real.
Can we put the coin
on
the table?
I really wish they had put the coin on the table.
And let's talk
I wish they would have given me a coin, because I would have been like, I have a coin or a conch if this is Lord of the Flies.
Call me down to your session.
Yes.
And then we could have had a
session. We could have had a real session.
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed in the initial response. But while I was packing up, people said, to create a safe space. The guy on the panel was like, as a male, he feels like he hasn't listened enough.
Which is good.
He said, he felt like maybe he was missing some of the key indicators around this thing. Boys will be boys, manly man type stuff, the locker room talk, all that. He was like, maybe he was missing something and he really wasn't hearing the real problem in the conversation.
Right.
And then the Twitter rep said, that it's symptoms of something bigger in society, which it is, obviously.
It's definitely symptoms of something bigger.
And then I left, so I don't know what else happened because I was just like, y'all have it's too much on me. It's a lot. And
so this is where we are now.
This is where we are.
I had 2 sessions that seemed to be pretty good. I would give them that thumbs up, right? Because they did okay. Everybody stayed in their lane.
Yes.
I'm not saying that anything was super profound.
Right.
But it wasn't bad at all. From Miss Donna, being able to have a great conversation with Citrix.
Yes.
To John being able to talk about connection and engagement and show that he actually knows how to do that because he was able to connect and engage really well with the audience and keep everybody intrigued.
Right.
And laughing and all of those things. And by at the same time giving good information.
Right.
And then on the other side of that coin,
it's the straight talk coin.
The straight talk coin. It just was. They didn't do it for you.
Neither
one of your sessions.
Neither one of my sessions.
They were disappointments.
They were disappointments. We're gonna try again tomorrow.
We're gonna try again tomorrow, and hopefully, and those tomorrow are also around diversity, inclusion. Tomorrow
there will be afternoon sessions.
Have some afternoon sessions.
Yes.
There's some diversity and what else? A lot of culture because that's what this is. WorkHuman. So there's so many different thoughts around culture. So we were really hoping to get some profoundness. We're hoping to get some things that maybe we didn't know already.
Yes.
And we definitely were thinking that we were going to get some things that we can take back and make our own selves better.
Yes.
Unfortunately, so far, it's just kind of been status quo.
Yes.
We know what we know.
We know what we know.
Possibly know more than some of the people that's talking.
Yes.
And
we know what not to do.
We know what.
So that's also important. It's an important takeaway, right? That sometimes, we've talked about this with managers and stuff like that. When you're a new manager, then you may not have ever managed people before.
Right.
If you don't have a guidebook to tell you, you at least know what not to do from bad managers you've had in the past.
Exactly.
Right? So from this perspective, we at least have gotten to see, the good things that Shantera got to see, but then also the things that we know we wouldn't want to do or carry forward or continue
in a
session of our own as it relates to these speakers.
Yeah, and it also gives us good data points for when we take our show on the road.
Yes.
Good data points,
Which is coming soon.
Things that we like, things we don't like, and of
Right.
course, I critique this kind of stuff all the time because
Right.
I've been doing it for so long that it's like, man.
Well, and honestly,
There's so many logistically, just for some of the very basics, we're noticing here, and so we'll of course talk about that at a different time.
Yeah.
Maybe when we wrap up the whole thing. At the end of the week, but we definitely have some lessons learned, and hopefully, as you guys come to our events and listen to us and see us out in the world, you will see that we don't make some of these mistakes.
And so, in wrapping up, though, I do want to pose a question to the YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, social media, whatever world, and that is, if you've been to conferences before, what makes a great conference for you? Is it the names of the speakers who come? Is it the activities? Is it the networking? Is it like when you think of going to a conference and the ones that you've gone to and you've just been like, man, that was a great conference. I got
what
out of it, fill in the blank, right? What makes a great conference for you? So we're interested in hearing. And then if we hear soon enough, that's good because we can take what you said that you'd like to hear, and then we can still compare it to some of the stuff we're seeing happen at the conference we're at right now. So hopefully you'll let us know. Otherwise, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
We'll give you a little rundown in the morning of what we're planning and expecting to get, and then by the end of the day, we'll come back and
recap again.
Give another recap.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for listening.
You guys have a great rest of the evening.
Bye.
Bye.